There is a very interesting hadith in which the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said that the day of judgment will not come until you Muslims fight people whose faces will be red, their noses will be flat, their eyes will be small, and their faces will be flat like shields, and their shoes will be made of hair. Now, after this hadith, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, conquered the entire Arab world until his death, and the Muslim empire spread throughout Arabia. After the Rashidun Caliphate of 30 years under Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman and Ali, Muslims created the largest empire in human history for the first time and became the world's superpower. But after just 30 years of rule, the Rashidun Caliphate ended, and the Umayyad dynasty took control of the Muslim empire for 90 years, expanding it even further. However, the Umayyad Caliphate had a major issue. It was exclusively Arab, with no status for non-Arabs. Despite the vast empire, Arabs rarely mingled with the rest of the population, and intermarriage with non-Arabs was impossible. All government posts were held by Arabs, similar to how Pakistanis and Indians are treated in the UAE and Saudi Arabia today. This led to a rebellion within the Umayyad Caliphate, and the Abbasid dynasty, descendants of the Prophet's uncle Abbas, took over. During the Abbasid era, the Muslim power reached its peak, known in the West as the Islamic Golden Age, with Baghdad as the capital, the world's most powerful city. The Abbasids built the world's largest library, the House of Wisdom, filled with the best books, stories and poetry, attracting intellectuals, scientists, poets and artists from all over the world. They also created a translation section to translate the great works of the past into Arabic, making Arabic the world's most powerful language, similar to English today. And the Abbasids were the first to fund scientists for research, leading to great Muslim scientists like Al-Khwarizmi, who introduced algebra, one of the greatest mathematicians of all time, whose work still holds great importance in science today. Alongside science, the arts also flourished, with books like 1001 Nights being written, containing stories that Hollywood still makes movies about, such as Aladdin, Ali Baba and Sinbad. In short, Muslims were the world's superpower with no one to challenge them. But when any empire reaches such a level, the only way forward is decline. Before the Abbasids, the Umayyad Caliphate was exclusively Arab. But the Abbasid Caliphate was the opposite, with people from every corner of the empire, including Persians, Turks and Greeks, involved in the government. One Abbasid Caliph even created a powerful Turkish army, the Seljuks, which eventually took control of the Caliphate, leaving the Caliph as a figurehead while the real power lay with the Seljuk army. This is similar to a modern prime minister being a figurehead while the real power lies elsewhere. The Seljuk army's control weakened the Abbasid Caliphate, leading to rebellions and the division of the empire into smaller parts, resulting in the loss of Palestine. During the first caliphate, when Umar, may Allah be pleased with him, conquered these areas, he also conquered Jerusalem, the holiest city for Christians. For the next 450 years, no one dared to take Palestine from the Muslims. But as the Abbasid Caliphate weakened and Muslims divided into smaller parts, European Christians took advantage and launched the Crusades to reclaim Jerusalem and Palestine from the Muslims. In 1099, they conquered Jerusalem, killing thousands of Muslims, including children, women, and the elderly, and burning their homes. One book even mentions that crusaders snatched Muslim children from their mothers and threw them from tall buildings. Muslims tried to escape by hiding in homes and mosques, but the crusaders set these buildings on fire, burning thousands of Muslims alive. If you think such cruelty is impossible, similar things are happening in Palestine today. A few Muslims escaped with an old Quran from the time of Uthman. May Allah be pleased with him. Despite this oppression, there was no Muslim leader to reclaim Palestine. But 40 years after losing Palestine, a child named Yusuf, later known as Salahuddin Ayyubi, was born in the house of a common soldier, Najmuddin Ayyub, in Iraq. At the age of 25, Salahuddin Ayyubi left Iraq with his uncle and eventually became the Sultan of Egypt after a long struggle. This is a long story for another time. Meanwhile, far away in Mongolia, a child named Temujin, later known as Changez Khan, was born in a small village. Salahuddin Ayyubi and Changez Khan lived in the same era, with one leading Muslims to glory and the other causing unprecedented destruction. After losing Palestine and Jerusalem, Muslims had no strong leader, but Muslim scholars played a crucial role in uniting Muslims with the goal of reclaiming Palestine. This idea took root in the minds of the young population of Muslim kingdoms. However, there was still no single leader to unite Muslims against the Christians. Finally, after becoming the Sultan of Egypt, Salahuddin Ayyubi made a truce with a group of Christians for 10 years of peace, similar to the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. He then began uniting Muslims and eventually became the most powerful Muslim ruler, with all Muslims looking to him to reclaim Palestine. In 1192, Salahuddin Ayyubi attacked the Crusaders and completely secured Jerusalem. The year 1192 was significant for Muslims as Salahuddin Ayyubi achieved a great victory and Shahabuddin Gauri attacked and conquered India, laying the foundation of the Delhi Sultanate. Almost 100 years later, Muslims began to stabilize and regain their lost honor. But now the time had come for the fulfillment of a hadith mentioned by the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, 600 years earlier. Far away, Changez Khan had united Mongolia and was rapidly expanding his power. Changez Khan's real name was Temujin, and his father was the chief of a small Mongolian tribe. But when Temujin was a child, another tribe secretly poisoned his father. Temujin was even enslaved in China, but eventually returned to Mongolia, united his tribe, and began expanding his empire. The Mongols gave him the title Changez Khan, meaning Great King. The name Khan was already used in the Turkish language, but Changez Khan made it famous worldwide. According to some surveys today, 25 million people have Khan in their names, like Shah Rukh Khan, Amir Khan, and Imran Khan. Mongolia is still a poor and ordinary country, and it was even weaker back then. So, when Changez Khan's empire began to grow, China did not take it seriously. But within a few years, Changez Khan conquered Beijing, China's capital, and people saw how cruel he was. We've all heard stories of his cruelty, like building pyramids of severed heads. But this cruelty was not just for pleasure, it served a purpose. Changez Khan divided his army into groups of 10, then hundreds, thousands, and tens of thousands. He made a rule that if one soldier in a group of 10 fled the battle, the other 9 would be executed. This ensured that soldiers did not flee, as their comrades would kill them if they tried. Changez Khan also established a justice system where stealing a horse would result in returning 10 horses, or the thief's entire family would be executed. This cruelty helped his empire expand rapidly, eventually clashing with the Khwarezmian Empire. Initially, Changez Khan had no intention of fighting Muslims, so he sent a delegation to the Khwarezmian Shah with a message of friendship. But the Shah imprisoned the delegation, prompting Changez Khan to send an ambassador to negotiate their release. The Shah beheaded the ambassador, a grave offense in Islam and international law. Enraged, Genghis Khan led an army of 100,000 soldiers to Khwarezm, starting a 100-year war between Muslims and Mongols. Changez Khan quickly destroyed the Khwarezmian Empire, beheading entire populations and building pyramids of their heads to instill fear. Before the Mongol invasion, the Khwarezmian Empire, including modern-day Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan, had a population of 2 million. After the invasion, only 200,000 remained, meaning Changez Khan killed 1.8 million Muslims. One day, Changez Khan gathered all the Muslims in a mosque, climbed the pulpit, and declared that their God sent him as a punishment. The Mongol Empire continued to expand, even conquering Russia. But during this time, Changez Khan died, appointing his son Ogedei as his successor and dividing the empire among his sons. Despite Changez Khan's death, the Mongol Empire continued to grow. Years later, his grandson Hulagu Khan prepared a large army and marched towards Baghdad, the capital of the Abbasid Caliphate, the world's largest and most powerful city at the time. Ideally, Muslims should have united to fight the Mongols, but they were too divided into sects, more interested in debates than fighting the Mongol Empire. Hulagu Khan besieged Baghdad and in 1258 captured it, killing the Caliph and ending the Abbasid Caliphate after 500 years of rule. Hulagu Khan's army spilled so much blood in Baghdad that the Euphrates River turned red for days. After the red, the river turned black as Hulagu Khan burned the House of Wisdom, the world's largest library, and threw the ashes into the river. This was the darkest time in Muslim history, as not only Muslims but also Islam's holiest sites were threatened. After the Abbasid Caliphate, only the Mamluk Sultanate stood between the Mongols and Mecca and Medina. If the Mongols had conquered the Mamluks, they would have destroyed the Kaaba in Mecca. But that didn't happen. When the Mongols advanced after capturing Baghdad, the Mamluk Sultan of Egypt, along with his general Baybars, decided to fight the Mongols. Despite being advised against it, as some scholars believed the Mongols were Gog and Magog and that the day of judgment was near, the Sultan and Baybars gathered an army. During this time, Hulagu Khan's brother, the ruler of the entire Mongol Empire, was killed, forcing Hulagu Khan to return with most of his army, leaving a smaller force behind. The Mongols and Muslims faced off at Ain Jalut in Palestine, the same place where David, peace be upon him, had defeated Goliath thousands of years earlier. The Muslims, though weaker, defeated the Mongols, halting their expansion forever. This battle, foretold by the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, ended with the Muslims' victory at Ain Jalut. Despite this, the Mongols still controlled a large part of the Muslim world with no one to challenge them. But gradually, the Mongols began studying Islam and were so impressed that many of them converted, bringing these regions back under Muslim control. If you look at the names of Changez Khan's descendants, they initially had Mongol names like Genghis, Ogedei, and Yochi, but gradually adopted Muslim names like Muhammad, Timur, Yunus, and Babur. The Mughal Empire, which ruled India for many years, was also descended from Changez Khan. Umar, may Allah be pleased with him, and Changez Khan had one thing in common. They built the largest and most powerful empires of their time. But there's a significant difference. Changez Khan is remembered as a tyrant, while Umar is recognized as a great leader worldwide. Subscribe for more amazing historical content.